much for joining. We look forward to having a good discussion here today. We're just waiting for Lisa to join. It looks like Lisa has joined now, so she should come through to our screen. Yeah, let me just add her in here. There you go. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, let me just swap my camera.
No problem. That's why we're in a little bit earlier. So, how are you doing?
Oh, it's been a very heavy Monday, but I
Yo,
just try to get some relaxation
yeah.
in before.
The Mondays start off very busy, but I think it's a good sign to have it so busy like that, eh?
I just got stuck with some paperwork, like my wheels just wouldn't turn, and
Yes.
it took longer than I expected, and that frustrated me. And then my team members were not we're not playing ball, and so
Yeah.
hopefully this live can just help me unwind a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really cool discussion. Thank you so much for joining, Lisa.
Of course.
And thank you so much. We currently live, so we've got a few guys that have joined. I see
Okay.
Ariana's here, Leanne's here. We have Lacquer Locals, which are here, which is awesome. So we've got quite a few people on the live already, which is nice. But as you know, the discussion that we have today as well, it's going to be recorded, so we can always post it as a reel, and then people can get educated through that as well.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I think, Lisa, let me just introduce the live. Basically, as you know, we're going to be discussing important points and tips for parents in terms of their estate planning, what to look out for as a new parent, what to update on your estate planning documents and portfolio. And then we're just going to be also looking at what are the important questions to ask before you appoint someone as an executor on your will.
Yeah.
Because what we found is that a lot of people don't actually pay close attention to who the actual executor is on their will. And then when it's too late, the family are looking for someone now that they don't know, that's not really invested in their well-being, and it causes a lot of pain. So I think what we're going to discuss today is quite important.
Yeah.
I'm just going to introduce myself quickly to our followers that don't know me. I'm Daniel Marsh. I'm the founder and director of Marsh Fidelity. We are Durban-born and bred business. COVID started business. So it was either sink or swim. We had a team complement of 3 passionate individuals. Leanne and Ariana are part of our team. Hopefully they'll be part of the lives in the future. We specialize in wills, estate administration, and trust fund management. So I think our purpose really is in our mission statement. We always aim to create an enduring difference through the service that we provide. And that's about going above and beyond just the administration requirements. I think communication is key. And I think one of the best sources of kindness is providing clarity. So when you can provide clarity to people, especially people that are in pain, that is one of the best ways you can be kind to someone. Because if you create a smoke screen and you make things unclear for people, especially the people that don't know the process, I find that is a cruel way to actually go about doing an administration process. So for us, clarity is a very big part of what we do, and we really try and make a difference, even if our clients don't know what service they've received, but at the end, they're just like, I'm grateful that we got in touch with these people. So that's our purpose and our mission. And then today, to our followers and everyone that's here today, we're joined by Lisa Thomas, aka Law Mom. She is an amazing individual. I've been following her on LinkedIn, and just like what I've discussed, the clarity that you bring, the ethics that you promote. Lisa's got an LLB degree through UKZN. She was admitted as an advocate in 2008. Very extensive legal experience, been through a lot of pressure environments. And what she's done is she's moved into a teaching space where she actually helps and assists up-and-coming professionals with advice, with courses. Her LinkedIn page, guys, if you ever get the chance, please go and follow her. It's got such cool insights and just easy to read, Lisa. Like that's what I found. Like your content is so easy to read. And I think with all the pressure and stress in life, having soft content where we can just read it and not feel like, oh my word, I need to actually open an encyclopedia here. I enjoyed that, and I just love reading your stuff. It also motivates me. It also puts me in check. I think ethics is important because you can't just forget about ethics. It has to be there as you start every day. When you're unsure about a decision you're about to make, always think like, what is the ethical point that I need to do here to be right in it? So yeah, Lisa, if you just want to introduce yourself a bit, also about a bit about how we came into contact, and then we can just go from there.
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Daniel and Ariana. I think Ariana is the one that made the link. So I always say you never know, you be helpful and you never know what can come of it. So
Yes.
I think I just helped her back in her CA days, and of course, I helped so many people. I obviously can't keep track, and so
Yeah.
and then to see her, I think I was following you guys as
Yeah.
well. Um,
Yeah.
and then I saw her get, start with you, and I was like, wow, it's like so nice.
Yeah.
And of course, I reached out, I was sending out my connections, a whole bunch of messages for the year, and so she said I was at the top of her list to get in contact with, and I was like, okay, it's nice to be at the top of. Depends on what list it is, but I
Yeah.
guess it's
Yes,
nice,
I
right?
like that comment.
So yeah, and then of course she reminded me that I'd helped her back in the day, and of course that you guys want to work together, and I think I've also been like low key fangirling, you guys' page.
Yeah.
I think because of what you've reiterated, right?
Yeah.
And I think we share a lot of the same values. So like the reason I make my content so readable and so comprehensible is because it's because of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of somebody. I was in that position where I needed to know certain things.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the same thing with the states, right? All of us have experienced death.
Yeah.
All of us have experienced, to some level, the confusion that arises around in that time, and you don't know, your head is not straight, and
Yeah.
so I think it's that shared kind of ethos.
Yeah.
Number one, and number two, of course, I am huge on ethics because, sad to say, I think that we have more experience with our colleagues doing the opposite of what they should be doing.
Yeah.
So, and a simple thing, not a simple. Estates are not a simple. It's not a simple area of
Yes.
law, and that's one area where you need the utmost integrity,
Yes.
uh, because that's such a vulnerable type of
Yeah.
client. So I think that's why my ethics, and I think I did one on deceased
Yeah.
estate, simply because I worked for attorneys as well, and I saw, you know, the abuse of clients. I saw people looking for closure, and of
Yeah.
course, not getting it, being dragged out, and there was just no consideration for what the clients were going through at the end of the day. And it
Yeah.
was all about, just keeping the file running so you can make more money off of it. And to
Yes.
me, it's not even legal ethics, it's just like
Yes.
inhumanity. It's not, you don't care about someone that is on the outside, it's just a file to you.
Yes.
So I think that's how I got to creating that particular post.
Yeah.
And I don't have extensive expertise in deceased estates.
Yeah.
So coming from an estate, advocacy background, whatever I learned in an attorney's practice, I had to learn on the job.
Yeah.
So filling out the forms, then going to the master's office, and that was all new territory for me.
Yeah.
So whatever I know is basic is quite limited, but I think I know and I've seen enough to know that that's not how you do it.
Yeah.
And, I have my views about how a state should be done. And I think you guys encapsulate that. As I said on one of your posts this
Yeah.
year, the start of this year, that you guys have made it into an art
Yeah.
form. So, if I had to like kind of like put like a list of dream jobs to have, or
Yeah,
even like areas of law to work in, like
yeah,
I would definitely become like some kind of a watchdog
yeah.
in the deceased to safe space.
Yes.
So yeah,
And I think like what you talk about when you say like ethics is so important, especially in the estates field. And I think a big way a client can tell if their executor
mm,
is ethical. A promoter of this is someone that's invested a lot of time to study that specific field of administration of estates. Because if
yeah,
you've done a number of advanced diplomas, like for example, the advanced diploma that I did in estates and trust administration, there was a whole module on ethics. And if you're going to invest a lot of time to study, it shows that you're actually committed to that field of work and you actually want to
yes,
do it properly. But if, for example, like you said, an attorney might have just done an LLB and they see an opportunity to make money out of estates, but they don't give it their
mm,
full commitment, and also they know they might not have capacity, but they take on the executorship role.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
after a year, the state's still running, and the family's like, guys, what's going on? And the worst thing you can do is not communicate effectively. So clear
yeah,
communication solves so many problems. Like what we found is that whenever a client of ours estate is registered, I'm available on WhatsApp to that client. And it might be
yeah,
as simple as what do I do with my TV license? But like you
yeah,
said, when you go through a loss, your emotions are so heightened, you don't have capacity to cope
mm,
for much else than I just need to grieve right now. And the
yeah,
stuff that I find hurtful is that some people are given the whole administration, basically 80% they have to do it themselves, follow ups, check in, but they've got an executor that's been appointed. So
yeah,
I think from that side, the ethics is very important, but also empathy. And empathy as an executor and any role and any business that you're in, I have found from my personal experience that my purpose was linked to a struggle that I overcame and conquered, and I don't want to see people go through that pain if I can help
yes,
it in any way. So I've had
mm,
a lot of personal loss in my life, and that drove me to find my purpose in estate administration. And then when I
mm,
started the business, it was literally a month. The PTY was actually registered in May 2020, okay? But I started in February, so it was literally just before lockdown.
uh,
So it was the most difficult time to start and interact.
yeah,
But I found my living purpose when I was in, and I could actually see burdens being lifted, and that started to motivate me. And I think if
yeah,
you're motivated by lifting burdens and you're not motivated by a 3.5% executor's fee, the work then
yeah,
starts to flow in because every family that we help, it's a whole field that we're touching and saying, we're going to lift this burden, but then that's a
yeah,
positive ripple in that community. So
mm,
that's how we
mm,
started our sides. And I think like what you've touched on is very important, but not only for estates, but for all businesses. Like if you're a business leader, make sure that ethics is at the forefront, but also
yeah.
make sure that you see through your client's eyes and not only through your eyes. It's so important.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also to, when it comes to even practicing law in general, like, yes, we do need to earn a living,
Mm.
but, you know, and I've said this previously that there's no such thing as a big client and a small client. And,
Yeah.
it's like I've done estates for like, when there's National Wool's
Yes.
Week. I mean, that's for the ones that
Yes.
are poor and can't afford, wool. So, I mean, I've done wools where like the person had like one car and a few pieces of jewelry.
Yes.
I mean, and I say that is that person's estate.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you've got to treat that with respect, the same respect as you would treat a client that, has like multiple businesses and
Yeah.
fleets of vehicles, and that is comprises might have been like their entire life's work or represents
Yes.
what they've achieved
Yeah.
financially. And they will leave like a pair of earrings to a granddaughter, or they will leave, they will say sell the car and distribute it amongst my children. And I mean,
Yeah.
I will applaud people who do that also, because even though they know that they don't need to have a lot of assets for it to be protected.
Yes.
So they say, this is what I have. I know I've got to do something in the event of my death. So let me go to an attorney
Yes.
and or come to a place like your practice and
Yes.
just put it down on paper how I want all of this to be distributed. Whether
Yeah.
it's a kettle, whether it's a, cell phone, whether it's computer equipment,
Yeah.
that it comprises your state. And at every level, we have to be treating, and that 3.5 there could be
Yes.
nothing, compared to 3.5 on a business person's estate. But I
Yeah.
mean, we treat it with the same
Yeah.
respect, and we give it the same reverence. And of course, when that person dies, we give that estate, winding up that estate, the same reverence as we would for a so-called,
Yes.
big client that has a lot of assets and the estate is more
And
complicated.
and I think, Lisa, that's what important. That's what doing work that makes a difference is about. It's about
Yeah,
saying yes, but saying yes with a helpful heart in place. So, like, in a story that I've had is that you never know what doors could open just through helping people that need help. Okay, so I had
yeah,
a client 2 years ago. I didn't know them at all. Their mom had passed away. They had a little bit in the bank account and one vehicle. The
yeah,
institution that this will was with, where the executor was nominated, said, listen, we're not going to take on this estate. It's too low. Please find someone else. And this is happening more and more often now. Eh? So you also just need to make sure that when you appoint your executor, just say, like, when I pass, if my estate is below a certain level, you're still going to take on the work. So anyway,
yeah.
this son called me and said, listen, I got your number from someone else you helped. Can you help? I said, he told me that it was a small estate. I said, 100% I'm in. I'm going to help you. And I'm going to get your mom's
Mhm.
estate sorted. I got his mom's estate sorted. I found out later that he was the head of a massive governing body in Joburg, a director. And after that estate, he moved his wills to us, and he's
Wow.
appointed me as a trustee on one of his trusts. And it's a massive, but you don't know what doors are going to open. The whole thing is that you have to be willing to help and also be willing to do all the work involved in that field that you say, I provide a service. I do
Yeah,
administration of deceased estates. It doesn't mean I'm only going to care for this sort of client or I'm only going to do this sort of client, because at the end of the day, what the goal is to provide closure to families. And that is
yeah,
one of the biggest points about having a will in place, is that with my last will that I write and I have in place, no matter what background, no matter what you have in your bank account, this
hmm,
document is going to be the last document my loved ones will read. I want to make sure it's a nice one. And that's what
yeah,
we help our clients with. No matter what, if you've got 5,000 Rand in your bank account, Lisa, it's taking 3 months to close a bank account. And I mean, that's because of the FICA involved. So I mean,
mm,
just having a will makes it so much easier to administer, because then you don't have to do interstate application papers. You don't have to get nomination forms signed. It's just so
yeah,
much cleaner. So I think, like, yeah, with that side, and especially as we lead into our discussion points, is that when you know that you're going to have a child, it's even more so important, because it doesn't become only about you.
yeah,
And you have to care for your child, especially if they're a minor child. Like when we had our son Luke, so when my wife actually said to me, listen, I'm pregnant. The first thing that I did, I don't know if it was a nervous response, but I said, we're going to upgrade our medical aid. Okay, so it wasn't, oh, babe, I was like, we need to upgrade our medical aid. Because I mean, I started to think, like, it's not about me anymore. And so
yeah, yeah,
that's why I think, like, in terms of estate planning, one of the prompters, any major event in your life, but when you have a child, you have to get first pointers. Make sure you have a valid, in place will, and make
hmm,
sure that you can trust your executor to have your back when you're no longer around. So
yeah,
that would be the first thing I would say, is just make sure that you have a valid will in place, preferably done by a professional.
yeah,
Because that is the essence of estate planning. It all starts with that original will that you have. And if you partner with the right executor, you'll make sure that what we what our goal is to make sure that the transition is softer and easier for the family. So
mm,
every year we check in with our clients. Guys, has anything changed in your life? Because it's a lot for a person to also think with the whole, everything that's going on in life, just for them to be responsible for their own estate planning. With
Yeah.
us, we have the once-off administration fee for drafting a will, which is it's not a massive amount, but it's something to cover our costs. But then what we do is every year, at no extra cost, we check in with the clients. Guys, has anything major happened in your life? Can we help update something? And by doing that, you're actually making sure that the wishes are aligned. Because
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than you passing and your will's 21 years old. Lisa, we had a client recently who remarried. Okay, he passed away. The wife thought he had no will. We got everything registered interstate. Wrote to one of the banks. The bank said there's a will from 1990, and
Oh dear.
and he only got married after 2000. Remarried. So you see how hectic it can get. That interaction and the communication is very important, especially when you nominate an executor on your will.
Yeah, and I think, you know, obviously we want people, you know, when they have a child or their marital status changes or they get remarried or whatever, you know, or a spouse dies and they had a joint will, obviously we want them to be alert.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, you know, everyone's busy with life, and there are those of us that are trained and
Yeah.
to be vigilant on their behalf,
Yes.
you know. So I think that check-in practice is so important, especially, and of course, especially when a new child is born, because that is now, you know, your legacy has just extended,
Yes.
you know, and so, and often, you know, I've seen, at least in the Indian context,
Yeah.
I mean, when you see children fighting when the parents
Yeah.
die, it's over the world. Like they would have been the
Yes.
best siblings when their parents were
Yes.
alive. But in my own family, we had siblings squabbling over the sofa
Yeah.
and the TV. And I mean, so like every time you have a child, yes, you update your
Yes.
world, but you know, you also maybe just update your assets or update and I think when we're phoning in to check with them, we check, okay, have you been remarried in the last 6 months?
Yes.
Have you had a child?
Yes.
You know, like we go through a checklist and we're like,
Yes.
okay, you know, this information is so that when that day arrives, which nobody
Yes.
wants to think about.
Yes.
But I think that's the nice thing about what you guys do as well, is that you bring that very negative experience forward,
Yeah.
but there's a very positive vibe around that.
Yeah.
So no one likes to talk about death.
Yes.
In fact, in my own you know, experience, uh, at some point we had to talk about it because, you know, I was not very well at some point,
Yeah.
and it was like, okay, what are we going to do in the event of this? And you know,
Yes.
you're going to choose between me and
Yes.
whatever, you know, whatever's going on, and you know, you got to confront, have that conversation. And I think
Yes.
that's the nice thing about even checking in, because you say, okay, so in the event of you dropping dead tomorrow,
Yes.
like the
Is
child that
everything
was just born,
aligned?
the child that was just born today
Yeah.
is gonna be covered, you
Yes.
know. So like, because everything is so uncertain, and I think
Yes.
COVID taught us that one minimal or one lesson is that you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, you know, and with
Yeah.
the alleged, you know, vaccination injuries, and
Yes.
you know, you never know. Like you could be like 40 something and have a heart attack and die the next minute,
Exactly.
you know. And
Yeah.
then if you've got young children or even if you've got teenagers, I mean, hey,
Yeah.
everything is like so
Yes.
expensive. And
Yes.
if your wife, and of course, you know, the choice of your spouse being the executor as well is also
Yeah.
um, an issue.
Yeah. It's a burden.
Yeah, it is, because and often I think people do that because it's the person that they trust the most,
Yes.
or they might turn one of their parents into the executors because it's the person that they trust the
Yeah.
most. Um, but often, like, if and we don't think, okay, or we tell them, you know what, guys, when you're gonna choose the executor, just imagine the people that you trust the most are gonna be affected the most
Yes.
by
Yeah.
your passing? And are they going to be able to have that presence of mind
Yeah.
to be able to maybe stall their grieving process
Yes.
and attend to their state? So when they're coming to us with their choice of executor, we must say, okay, think about it in those terms, and never mind the fact that they might not be trained in estate management and all that.
Yeah.
Like they might not know the law, but are they going to be in that mental
Yeah.
position to help your spouse, help your children,
But you know what
and
you
just
can
help
also
them?
suggest, Lisa, if a
Mhm.
client wants to appoint their surviving spouse as executor, you can say that
Yeah.
would be perfect, but why don't we be co-executors?
Yes.
So in our capacity as professionals, we'll say we're 100%, but why don't you consider us being co-executors? We will attend to all the administration stuff, but your spouse will still be involved because, as you said, there's someone that you trust, but remember, it's a massive burden to be appointed as an executor, and you've
Yeah.
also got responsibilities to the Master of the High Court when your name is on that letter of executorship. So
Yes.
I think like
Yes.
it is a lot of people go that way, but also remember a lot of surviving spouses aren't qualified or have capacity to administer an
Mm.
estate. So then they need to
Yeah.
look for a professional agent. But when you've lost someone you love, the last thing you want to do is go and find people that can help. You just want to
Yeah.
have someone on board from the start that you build a
Yes.
relationship with. So, like you said, I know that there's a lot of squabbles that, in some particular cases in the States, but having a clear, up to date will reduces those squabbles by up to 90%. Because if you've got very clear directions in your will, it's very hard to
Mm.
argue against it. And if you
Yeah.
really want your intentions to shine through, partner with a professional. So, like when we partner with our clients, we make sure that we look at all possible contingencies and we say, guys, I know you
Yeah.
want to do it this way, but it could lead to an argument down the line. Can we structure it this
Yeah.
way? And in that way,
Yeah.
you protect it. And also, like you said, you're protecting your family's hearts in terms of the pain that could be faced if arguments happen after passing. So I think,
Yeah.
like we said, though, having a valid in-place will is very important if you become a new parent. But then you have to put a testamentary trust clause in your will. Okay, so with this testamentary trust clause is basically in place to protect your minor's inheritance from going to the government guardian fund. You
Okay.
you can set the age limit of the testamentary trust clause, but it has to start from 18 because that's when you go from a minor to a major. So if
Uh-huh.
you die and your kid is 8 and you don't
Yeah.
have this clause in your will, their inheritance will get paid to the guardian fund to be
Mm.
administered until they reach 18. So that
Mm.
means, remember, when you need to pay for certain things, you have to apply there. But if you've got a testamentary trust clause in, you can at least have a professional that's caring for those funds, paying for the medical aid, paying for the schooling. That leads on to always make sure that you trust the executor that you've appointed because they could be involved in your child's life for 15, 16, 17 years. And
Yeah.
if they're a trustee on a trust, you have to make sure that firstly, do I know who the executor is? Do I know that they have capacity to support my family? Do they have my family's back? It's very
Yeah.
important questions to ask now when you have a child because you have to think about these things because if you were to pass and your kid's 17 years, it depends what age limit you set that testamentary trust to. Most people say
Yeah.
25 or 21 because they want the kid to receive a lump sum after
Yeah.
they finish university. Because, I mean, just imagine starting university and you get a lump sum payment. It could get hectic. So I think the testamentary trust clause is important, but you have to
Yeah.
also think like, okay, who's the executor on my trust, and who is the trustee? So I think
Mm.
that's important. But what I also made reference to is that I thought about it in terms of myself when I was a young professional and I had a child. Is that okay? I haven't built up the wealth that I want at this stage. So in my
Yeah.
personal will, I'm happy to disclose this. So basically, what I did was I set a cap, okay, and I
Yeah.
said, listen, if my estate is below 250,000 rand at the time of my death, and both me and my wife pass, I would want that
Mm.
money to go to the guardians directly of my minor, so that
Yeah.
I don't have to set up a testamentary trust. I don't have to have management fees associated. I trust that my guardians will do the right thing for my children, but I will bequeath that to them. If my estate's over
Okay.
250, let's do the
Yeah.
testamentary trust. And in that way, you're also having peace of mind. Like, listen, I might not have a lot to leave, but whatever I do leave, if it's below a certain amount, I want it to go to the guardians. Leads us on to our next point. Very important to appoint a guardian in your will if you're a new parent. And it's even
Yeah.
more important to speak to the guardians when you appoint them and say, guys, listen, I know most cases as parents, but sometimes it might not be. Would you be willing to be the guardian of my minor if I were to pass? And
Yeah.
if you have this discussion whilst you're live and they say, listen, I don't think I'm going to be committed in a sense to do that, then you can say, okay, let me make the updates now, because nothing worse than that happening after you're gone and like you don't have peace of mind, like are they really going to accept the appointment?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that communication and clarity, and it can all be done in a bracket, but with the support of a professional, so that once you've attended to the core requirements, you know that, okay, I have peace of mind, and then, like you said, year on year, review it, and you can always update.
Yeah. I mean, I think, this point about when you have a child, you do a will. I think, and of course, to have the testamentary trust in play, the clause in
Yes.
place. I think there's this misconception around the states is that you're only going to die when
Yes.
you're old, and so I think by talking about these things also, we, in a small way at least, we kind of shatter that myth that no, you can't actually die tomorrow
Yeah.
and your child is like a few days old.
Yes.
So there's this thing about it's gonna happen, it's far into the future, and I don't have to worry about, my children are young now that I have to put this kind of clause in because they're
Yeah.
gonna be majors by the time I die. There are a lot of
Yes.
assumptions I think even new parents make. So they might say, I can do the will next year, or I can update it some other time.
Yeah.
The child is still a baby, and
Yes.
I'm healthy, and so we have all these like kind of rationalizations that we say no, I'm only gonna die at a certain point, and so my
Yes.
child will have money after I die. But we never ever, like I said, we never think of fast forwarding it
Yeah.
and bringing it into the present and saying, will my child have that protection?
Yeah.
And of course, with the guardian, with the executor, will they have all the protection that they need
Yes.
if my death were to happen tomorrow? And if we delay that update, or even delay doing a
Yeah.
will altogether, or even have a general will in place and not even modify it to reflect the fact that you have
Yeah.
children, you know, that can be those operating on those assumptions can be very, very
Yeah. And
dangerous.
the
Um,
thing is, Lisa, like from our end, we've seen so many cases where people have had stuff in plans, written emails, which don't count as a will, and they
yeah.
have all these plans, and we've seen them pass, and then we've seen the pain.
Oh
And I promise you,
gosh.
Lisa, I can't even explain how hurt the families are that are left behind without closure and clarity by proper, well done last will and testament. Because remember, then it's up to interstate succession. But if you've, for example, had mixed marriages where you've remarried and you've had other kids, it becomes so painful, especially when minors are involved, Lisa. So I think, like you're saying, the promptness is that you can have all those assumptions, but have them with the will. So just say, like,
Yeah.
I know in the future they're probably going to make it to a major. You can have that, yes, but just have a will in place so that if they don't, okay, you've got peace of mind. Because just going off of assumptions, especially as a parent where you've got a lot of responsibility now, like I always say to my wife, one of my greatest leadership roles is being Luke's dad. Like
Yeah.
that is one of the biggest leadership roles, because I want to
Yeah.
have a positive impact on his life so that the community that he's in can benefit from his positive outbeing. And I mean, everything with a child is monitored. Eh? So like
Yeah.
even even like we were in the garden the other day and I was like chipping the ball for our dogs. And I didn't know that Luke was sitting on the patio, but I turned and he was just staring at me. And I was like, it's just something in my heart. I've never had it before. And I was like, this little human is just watching everything that I'm doing and learning and absorbing. So I think like as a parent, you have to think more outside the box, and you can have your assumptions, but you really need to have your assumptions with a solid foundation built already. So if you're assuming things, you can have that, but if you've got your solid will in place, it's okay to assume. But if you don't have a will in place and you assume that things will be okay, it's very dangerous territory. So in terms of the testamentary trust, Lisa, another thing that I have given advice to clients, and I would like to give advice here in our live, is that you've got a testamentary and trust clause in place. Your child will receive a lump sum at the age of 21 if you put that in the clause, okay? What I recommend is that you do a letter written to your child in your own handwriting to say, if you receive this money, I'm no longer around, but these are my wishes and intentions and hopes for you with the money that we've worked hard to provide for you. Because that changes stuff. If I just pay a child the inheritance at 21, say they inherit 1.5 million, I just pay it. They don't have any guidance from their parents, the people that love them the most, the closest to them, to say, this is my direction. So now when it's a handwritten note from a parent, I would then hand that over when they turn 21 with the payment. And it might actually save them, and it might actually change the course of their life when they get that massive inheritance payment, or even 500,000 lump sum at 21 is a lot. Okay, so so I mean, if you get a letter with it from your parents to say, listen, I know you're going to receive this at 21. This is my hopes. This is my dreams for you. I really want you to achieve, and try your best. You don't have to put pressure on them, but you can just give them something from your heart that's handwritten. Because I mean, that's like what I say about transitions and closure and being thoughtful in estate planning. It's not just, I'm going to do my will through a big institution because it's free and I'm done. I think there's so much more to it, and I think that a lot of people are missing a massive piece in transition through estate administration. That's what we've been trying to bring to the field. And all the families we've worked for in the past, that's why I was grateful for your compliment where you said that we make it like an art form, because true art is when someone is following their purpose and it's making a positive impact from someone else. I'm not following anyone else's purpose to make the work that we're doing. I'm just following the work that I love. I'm bringing on team members that I know that I can trust. Ariana and Leanne have been absolutely amazing with service. They're both honest, utmost integrity, working hard, but also they've got that empathetic heart where they're like, we're going to go the extra mile. So I think that like the purpose that we provide in terms of service, sometimes that can be seen as art because there's just so much love for the field. I was grateful to find this. I started the business at 29. And I mean, that it was quite a young age to start this sort of business, because a lot of people in the executors roles know like anything, but they're more older on in age. And I mean, I think I got fast tracked because when you love something, like when I was studying, Lisa, it sounds strange, but I enjoyed reading the content. Like I would look forward to reading a module, and people would be like, just don't say that out loud because then people are going to think you're a bit cooked. But I mean, I really enjoyed reading the content, and it's the first time that I was like, because I was applying what I was learning straight away to families, and I mean, that's the thing, is that I was really, because the fact that you saw it as art, I was also feeling like I know I'm in the right place. And when I started this whole estate journey, I was actually a financial manager for a KFC franchise owner. And I'm still involved with that family. So he started off with one KFC. He had 21 KFCs when I was working for him. And I was doing the financial management, and I was learning a lot there, but I just didn't feel like I had energy. Even I was getting stuff done and doing, but I didn't feel like my soul was really being fed. And when I did my first estate, it was a lovely Christian man, CA, very, very qualified and accomplished gentleman. He was the Hillcrest town clerk for many years. And he was married for over 50 years. Him and his wife both got cancer at the same time. And his went into remission, and he unfortunately passed. And this was one of the first estates that I did. And because he was so accomplished and stuff, like I was cautious when I went to meet with him, but he was such a soft and meek man. But like, you know, it's like still waters run deep. Like I really experienced it with him, and I sat down with him and I said, because his wife passed away in his arms, and I said to him, like, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this. And what he said to me was that, Daniel, my greatest accomplishment in my life was holding my wife when she passed. So all these things and everything that we chase, these titles, and that he had all of this, his greatest accomplishment at the end of this whole journey was holding his wife. And like when I heard that, like I still get a bit of goosebumps when I talk about it, but like when I heard that, I just knew like this was the work I'd do for the rest of my life. It was like I knew that this was my purpose, and I managed to lift a burden through that administration. And then what was cool is we became friends, and I would meet with him for coffee and tea, and he would give me advice because he was a CA. He would give me advice, but he would also prepare the tea, you know, like old school with the teapot and the china and the little like knitted warmer. Okay, the teapot warmer. So that's how the journey started, and I've been through a lot of situations where the estate isn't easy, but my purpose is fulfilled in making peace in that situation, because you also have to be a mediator. You're not just there to tick the administration requirements. You're dealing with kids, you're dealing with wives, families, husbands. And to be an effective executor on a will, you can't just be an academic brain. You can't. You have to be able to say, I know what they're going through. I'm not going to push on this. I'm going to give space here. I'm going to move in this direction. And in that way, you create peace in the situation. So that's how I practiced it. And it's been working well. And I mean, so I think that's how I came to find my journey. And there's a bit more to my story. I had a good interview with Mr. Luke Holden, who's joined Durban Small Business Podcast, where I talked about the journey as well. But to get back to what we were discussing, the guardians, we're up to the point where a new parent must testamentary trust. Firstly, make sure there's a will. Testamentary trust, appoint a guardian. Okay? And another very important thing is have a life file in place. Okay? We do templates on our website at Marsh Fidelity of a life file. And what we've done, we've designed it. What is the most important information if you were to die today that you would want your closest people to know, or your executor? So now, when you've got a child, remember there's medication that they might be taking. It's something that needs to be updated annually or as often as you can, but there's medication. They're on a medical aid. What school are they part of? What accounts are you paying for them monthly? List all of this stuff in there so that when someone comes in, the transition isn't what was happening in this child's life, what did they need, what was the monthly cost. For example, for us in my life file, I would put that the average cost for maintenance of our child is X amount, and we spend most of it at Dis-Chem when we just go there for a bottle of water, but we end up buying, you know, those things that you go into Dis-Chem and you just want to get like one sweet, and you walk out with a 2 kg honey that was on special. But Lisa, you know what I'm saying? It's like a valid life file where, and the ones that we designed are digital, so you don't have to write it out. You type it in and you update it here. If you change the medical aid, you just pop it in. So that life file that goes in your wills folder is very cool, because then the person that takes over can be like, oh, this is what's done monthly. It slots in, and the guardians as well then can be like, okay, I've accepted my role, and they've got that introduction to the book. because they have to
Yeah.
rewrite the back end of it. But if they've got an introduction, they've got that base to build off of. So life file is very important.
Mm.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because I know you commented on the life file once, and I mean, I think it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a novel. I hadn't heard of it
Yeah,
before. So, it goes back to what you were saying about, even leaving that note with the lump sum
yeah,
situation. Often we reduce estates to
yeah,
assets.
yeah,
It's easy to go and to get into that era where it's like, okay, mom has passed, or dad has passed, or they both have passed, and now their legacy is just reduced to stuff and
yeah.
money. you know. So I think that even that writing that note,
Yes,
yes, obviously it's not a will, and it maybe the author of the note will actually specifically state that this is not a will,
yes,
but these are my. So I think that leaving that note and even having the live file is like that person is still around.
yes,
Their mind is still there, and you might even the child or the other spouse, maybe they can hear their voice in their mind as they're
yes.
reading the live file, or they're reading the child is reading that note that came with the payment.
You
So
still
I
have a
think
piece of
that
them. You
yeah,
still have a piece of them to
yeah.
hold
I
on
mean,
to forever.
and and they may never have, maybe never have even told you they loved you or they cared about you,
Yes,
but by having somebody that, like you guys, where you say, okay, we have this thing called a live file, and we advise you to write a note if you're
yes,
going to leave that lump sum to your child.
yes,
um, if you guys hadn't put that in
yeah,
place, then that child might never have heard. And it could be an adult child, it could be a
yeah,
minor, could be a teen,
yeah,
but after they get that last, maybe that might be the only written piece of,
yes,
to say that I care about you, these are my wishes. I may not have said it often when I was alive, but this is what I want you to do with the
sure.
money. And
That's
even
got
the
so
life
much
file,
value.
yeah,
So
even
much value.
even the life file, I mean, that is like, because you can't put everything into a will. That's a fact, right?
Exactly.
A
Yes,
will is a business document
yes,
essentially, and so
yes,
it must comply with all the requirements, and of course reflect the intention of the person whose will it is.
yes,
So having that live file, it's almost like a contingency, because again, when someone passes, your mind is in a
yes,
fog. Okay, even if the executor is somebody that's reasonably close to the person who
yeah,
passed, they that kind of direction and coming directly from the testator
yeah,
or the testatrix,
yeah,
that is priceless, because they'll say, okay, okay, like it's almost like this person is directing me from the grave,
yes,
and it's like,
yes,
I think it's such a novel idea, and it's so simple. It's a live file. It's like, okay,
yes,
how do you want them to conduct the affairs surrounding the things that still are up in the air,
yes,
and
yes,
not finalized? How do you want them to go about doing that?
yeah,
And so I think that's why that live file idea caught my attention. I think it's so important because besides having the will, an
yeah,
accurate will, and that is the intention of the testator with regards to their
yeah,
stuff, okay? But there's emotions attached to the stuff,
yes,
right? There's
yes,
emotions attached to the people to whom you're leaving the stuff. So you
yeah,
can use the live file to state all of those emotional
yes,
aspects,
yeah.
and then, yeah,
And also, Lisa, remember that we all run our own homes, okay?
yeah,
But when you pass away, the running of your home doesn't stop. It actually
yeah,
continues, but now someone slots in, they don't have a clue. Do you have domestics? What were you paying for? Who's your landlord if you're
yeah,
renting? Okay, if you've got your bond, who's the bond with? How's the
yeah,
interest getting paid? So all these things, like you can start off with like, how is my home managed? What is the most important things I do to make sure the home is functioning? Pay rent or bond
yeah,
is usually the first. I've got a security company. I'm not going to shout out anyone, but I'm just saying you've got a security company that you're helping protect your place. Okay, so just these little things. The executor then sees the life file and says, "Oh, this is cool." So what we've done, we designed the app, which you know about, and what happens is if you're a will client of ours, you activate a portal. So it will be Daniel Marsh's portal. I've got a username login. In there, I'll see my will, but I'll also see my digital life file. And then when I send the client the annual reminder, they can go in and say, hey, we've actually switched our security company. Can you update? And in that way as well, it becomes, like I always say, you need support with your estate planning. And it needs to be ongoing. It can't just be once off and we don't look at it again. So I think like those small things, it's all building blocks to making the transition easier, but also building blocks to closure if anything happens to you, because that's the most, in my view, the most important thing about estate administration is closure for your loved ones and estate planning. So I think that's and then the final point that I'd put here as a new parent is look at getting life cover, especially if you're a main provider or you provide and contribute towards your home. Just look at getting a life cover in place so that if anything happens to you, there's a payment made. Even if you don't want to get a life cover, get a policy that pays out a bit of cash to your loved ones directly so it doesn't come into your estate. Because if you've got it, I don't know if you're aware, but if you nominate a beneficiary on a life policy, it doesn't fall into your estate. It can get paid to the beneficiary straight away. So you don't need to register the estate, wait for a letter of executorship. Those policies will get paid to the loved ones. They can use that money to attend to burials, attend to ongoing costs of the house and all of that. So those are the points that I had listed. And I think, like from our discussion, we're in line with what we've discussed in terms of the importance of just doing more, especially when you become a new parent. It's not enough just to keep a will in place and leave it. So I think, Lisa, that comes to our first section, which was very cool. I can't believe, Lisa, we've been chatting for nearly an hour.
I know. I found that with digital communication, 1 hour is like 20 minutes. It's like it flies, even in a meeting.
Yes. But I think like I just wanted to touch on the last section we were going to chat about, because I think we've covered a lot on questions to ask before you appoint an executor on your will. And one of the things that we briefly touched on is that you need to make sure you know who your executor is. And you need to make sure that they have capacity to accept that responsibility well, because it's a very big responsibility. Remember, estates at the moment are taking a minimum of a year to finish. So this person is going to be in your family's life for a year. If the estate isn't done well, it goes on 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So I think it's very important to check that, but also, what is their track record? Because this is one of the few services that you will never see completed, but you'll make an appointment. So you'll sign on with a company, but you'll never see them do the work that you're signing them on for. So just do a bit of research. Google, what is their history? Do they specialize in it, or they're doing it part-time? Because if they're doing it part-time, that could mean that your family's care could be part-time care. So I think like with our firm, what we structured in our lineup is we wanted to specialize in the fields that we offer. So we're not financial planners, we're not brokers, we don't do anything else, we just do administration. And I think with that becomes the efficiency grows itself, because we're only doing one particular service and we're really on top of that. So that if there's ever any changes or the court has had any adjustments, we can update it straight away. So I think it's important to know who your executor is, make sure that they've got capacity, do your due diligence, make sure that you can see that, they have been doing estate work. If you go look online, Lisa, and there's nothing in this day and age, you have to ask yourself, why is there nothing here? Why is it empty? And then you need to make an informed decision, because you're doing this for your family. Like I said, your last will is the last document they will have of yours, and the last document that will be lodged at the court. The original wills are lodged there, so it will always be at the court for even future generations to come and have a look at. And you have to make sure that if the last experience is going to be your estate administration, the last experience that your family have of you, you want it to be a good experience. You don't want your family to walk away to say, I really loved my mom and dad, but that estate, it's always got pain for me. But if you walk away and say, listen, I felt supported through that process, that's what a good executor does. They make people feel supported, even if sometimes I'm in situations where the decision that I make always has to be aligned with the Administration of Estates Act. But sometimes when families are fighting, the two brothers' viewpoints might be in line with the Estate Act, and the two sisters aren't. Or the brother and sister have alignment in that other, and then I say, guys, this is the direction. And then I always get, in these cases, you being biased. But in terms of my view, if I'm following the act and I'm making sure the master's updated, I've got peace of mind that I'm doing the best service I can for this family. And that's where professional steps in and takes control. Because if you've got someone who's not professional, they don't follow the act. They go on emotions and preferences and favoritism. And that can be very dangerous as well. Back to the point, ethics and how do we practice ethics? Make sure you align yourself with the Administration of Estates Act. That's one of my core principles. If there's anything that I've got doubt about, I'll firstly look at the act. If it doesn't align, I need to change it. But if I'm unsure about it, I then write to the master and say, I'm having this particular issue because I'm invested in it. You see, and I think, like you said, if you're invested in something, the ethics will then follow. So, so also make sure, is your executor registered with a governing body? So governing bodies, there's FISA, which is the Fiduciary Institute of South Africa, but there's many governing bodies. Now, governing bodies are cool because there's annual requirements to make sure you stay there. You have to do certain CPD sessions to make sure you're updated and informed. But if your executor isn't part of any governing body, then you're going to run yourself into a bit of risk because they're not being accountable to themselves, but more importantly to the clients, to say, listen, I'm investing money annually to make sure I'm updated because I care about the work that I'm providing. And remember, the executor's fee is capped. It's 3.5%. So if you appoint your spouse as executor and they appoint an agent, the agent isn't capped by 3.5%. So why not just appoint a professional and say, this is the best person I can find to be my executor? Then you know,